Motorcycle engines are already pretty insane when you think about it. You can buy a machine that weighs a fraction of a car, revs beyond 10,000 RPM, and produces enough power to embarrass some serious sports cars. But even by motorcycle standards, some engines are just completely ridiculous. Over the years, manufacturers and custom builders have experimented with rotary engines, 6 cylinders, V8s, steam power, and even car engines stuffed into motorcycles. Some became racing legends, some became collector icons, and some probably should never have existed in the first place. So today we're looking at 7 of the most unbelievable motorcycle engines ever built. And we're starting with one of the strangest production motorcycles Japan ever gave us. Number 7, Suzuki RE5. In the 1970s, Suzuki decided that normal pistons apparently weren't interesting enough. So instead, they built the RE5 around a 497 cubic centimeter Wankel rotary engine. Yes, a rotary-powered motorcycle. Instead of conventional pistons moving up and down inside cylinders, the engine used a rotating triangular rotor to compress and burn the air-fuel mixture. If that sounds familiar, it's because Mazda later became famous for using the same basic engine concept in cars like the RX-7 and RX-8. And on paper, rotary engines actually make a lot of sense for motorcycles. They're compact, they're smooth, and they love to rev. The problem: reliability. Rotary engines were notorious for issues involving components like their apex seals, and they never received the decades of development that conventional piston engines enjoyed. Still, back then, people genuinely thought rotary engines might become the future of motorcycling. Several Japanese manufacturers explored the idea, but Suzuki was the company that actually put one into production. The RE5 was built from 1974 to 1976 and claimed around 62 horsepower. Unfortunately, the motorcycle was complicated, heavy, and not exactly the revolution Suzuki hoped for. Suzuki was apparently so concerned about reliability that buyers were offered a 12-month full engine replacement warranty. The RE5 failed commercially, but nearly 50 years later, that's exactly why it's fascinating. It represents an era when motorcycle manufacturers were willing to try something completely different. And somehow, the next engine is even crazier. Number 6, Honda RC211V V5. Imagine building a motorcycle engine with 5 cylinders, not 4, not 6, 5. That's exactly what Honda did with the legendary RC211V MotoGP machine. The RC211V arrived during a major transition in Grand Prix motorcycle racing. The brutal 500 cubic centimeter two-stroke era was ending, and manufacturers were beginning to develop a new generation of 4-stroke race bikes. Honda responded with a 990 cubic centimeter V5. 3 cylinders sat on one bank and 2 on the other, creating one of the most distinctive engine configurations ever used in top-level motorcycle racing. And it wasn't just weird, it was devastatingly effective. Valentino Rossi rode the RC211V in 2002 and 2003, and the combination absolutely dominated. In its debut 2002 season, Rossi finished more than 100 points ahead of his nearest championship rival. Later versions of the machine reportedly produced more than 240 horsepower. Remember, this was a purpose-built racing motorcycle from the early 2000s, and the electronics were nowhere near what modern MotoGP riders rely on today. The RC211V became one of the defining motorcycles of its generation. But unlike our next bike, you couldn't exactly walk into a normal dealership and buy one. Number 5, Honda CBX. If the V5 wasn't enough cylinders for you, Honda had another answer. 6. The Honda CBX was produced from 1978 to 1982 and came with a massive 1,047 cubic centimeters inline 6-cylinder engine, producing roughly 100 horsepower. An inline 6 on a motorcycle. Even today that sounds excessive. In the late 1970s, it was completely outrageous. And that's exactly what makes the CBX so special. Visually, the engine dominates the motorcycle. The cylinder block stretches across the frame, making it immediately obvious that this isn't a normal 4-cylinder machine. But the real magic happens when the engine starts revving. An old-school carbureted inline-six spinning beyond 10,000 RPM creates a sound that almost nothing else on two wheels can replicate. Honda wasn't technically the first company to sell a six-cylinder production motorcycle. That distinction belongs to Benelli and its 750 SE. But the CBX became one of the most famous examples of the concept. It was excessive engineering for the sake of creating something memorable. And today, that's exactly why enthusiasts still love it. But if six cylinders sound complicated, our next motorcycle decided cylinders weren't old-fashioned enough. It went much further back. Number 4. The Black Pearl Steam Motorcycle. Yes, this thing is powered by steam. The Black Pearl was created by Revvada Customs in the Netherlands, and describing it as a normal motorcycle feels almost dishonest. It looks more like somebody took a 19th century steam locomotive, shrunk it down, and somehow balanced it on two wheels. There's a boiler, there's steam, there's even coal on board. What it doesn't have is speed. The Black Pearl reportedly tops out at around 5 miles per hour. So basically, someone jogging next to you could probably win the race. But speed completely misses the point. This machine exists because somebody asked the question, can we build a steam-powered motorcycle? And instead of realizing how ridiculous that sounded, they actually did it. It's mechanical theater. It moves, makes noise, produces steam, and looks like something designed during the Industrial Revolution after somebody discovered motorcycles by accident. You can't walk into a dealership and buy one. But as a demonstration of just how weird motorcycle engineering can become, the Black Pearl absolutely deserves its place on this list. Now let's move from 5 miles per hour to something capable of rearranging your internal organs. Number 3. PGM V8. A V8 motorcycle sounds like something you'd expect from a cartoon. But the PGM V8 is very real. Created in Australia, this machine combines two Yamaha R1 derived cylinder banks to create a roughly 2-liter V8 engine. The result? About 334 horsepower and more than 150 pound-feet of torque in a naked motorcycle weighing roughly 520 pounds. For perspective, plenty of cars don't make 334 horsepower. This thing gives you that power while you're sitting directly on top of the engine with almost nothing separating you from the outside world. And because it's a V8, it doesn't sound like a conventional superbike either. It has the deep mechanical character you'd associate with a performance car, combined with the aggressive revs of a motorcycle. Everything about the PGM V8 feels unnecessary, which is exactly why it's brilliant. And unlike some experimental machines on this list, this wasn't merely a concept. If you had around $180,000 to burn, you could actually buy one. Of course, putting something resembling a car engine into a motorcycle isn't exactly a new idea. Which brings us to perhaps the most ridiculous machine here. Number 2, the Road Dog. Built in 1962, the Road Dog looks less like a motorcycle and more like a land-based battleship. It was created by William Wild Bill Gelbke, and almost every part of the machine seems designed to answer one question. How big can we make this thing before it stops being a motorcycle? At its heart sits a Chevrolet 153 cubic inch inline-4 engine. That's roughly 2.5 liters. An engine designed for cars and also used in marine applications, ended up powering a two-wheeled machine. And the Road Dog was so enormous that simply stopping created another problem. At low speeds, balancing and steering it was extremely difficult. So the motorcycle used hydraulic supports that could be lowered to hold the machine upright. Think about that, a motorcycle so massive that it basically needed landing gear. Today, the Road Dog survives as a piece of motorcycle history. It wasn't about creating the fastest or most practical machine. It was about proving that somebody could build something completely absurd and somehow make it work. But our final engine didn't need a massive car motor to become terrifying. It just needed 2 strokes, 3 cylinders, and absolutely no concern for your survival. Number 1, Kawasaki H2 Mach 4. Before the modern supercharged Kawasaki H2 existed, there was another H2. And this one earned a nickname that still follows it decades later, the Widowmaker. The Kawasaki H2 Mach 4 arrived in the early 1970s with a 750 cubic centimeter 2-stroke 3-cylinder engine. On paper, its power doesn't look particularly terrifying by modern standards. But raw horsepower numbers don't tell the story. Two-stroke engines deliver power very differently from modern four-strokes. As the engine enters its power band, the acceleration can arrive suddenly and violently. Combine that with the chassis, suspension, tires, and brakes available in the early 1970s, and you had a motorcycle that demanded serious respect. The H2 became famous for its explosive acceleration and willingness to lift the front wheel. It wasn't refined, it wasn't packed with electronic rider aids, and it certainly wasn't trying to protect you from yourself. You controlled the throttle. Everything after that was between you and physics. That's why the original H2 remains such an icon. Modern motorcycles are dramatically faster, safer, and more sophisticated. But very few have the same raw reputation. And that's what makes all 7 of these engines so interesting. The Suzuki RE5 tried to make rotary power mainstream. Honda created 5-cylinder MotoGP dominance and a screaming 6-cylinder road bike. Someone built a motorcycle powered by steam. Australia gave us a 334 horsepower VI-8 monster. The Road Dogg proved that apparently even a giant Chevrolet engine could become motorcycle equipment. And Kawasaki created a 2-stroke legend people still call the Widowmaker. None of these machines followed the safe formula. Some were successful, some were failures, some were completely ridiculous. But motorcycles would be a lot less interesting if engineers never tried ridiculous ideas. So which one would you actually want to ride? The screaming Honda CBX? The insane PGM V8? Or would you risk your life on the original Kawasaki H2? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this look at some of the wildest engines ever put on 2 wheels, subscribe for more motorcycle stories. I'll see you in the next one.